Why you're here today, kind of your purpose for being here. And apologies for starting a little bit late here. And we're going till 2:30, correct? I know some of you had to leave early. 2:30. 2:30. Okay. And we don't have sound, which is kind of a bummer because there's sound built into this, but we'll just do the best we can. All right.
Yeah, it's pretty good sound.
All right. So let's see what we've got here. So Meg, welcome. Thanks for being here. What's your purpose for the day? Support. Awesome. Okay, who else would like to share? Okay, yes, Anna.
Jobs.
Jobs. All right. Okay, who else would like to share?
I put to learn and be inspired.
Ooh, that is a lot of pressure. Okay, good. Okay, and
I wrote a short novel, which is typical of me, but basically the core is wellness in the work environment, ways to encourage greater wellness and life balance.
Okay, great. And anybody who's already, I know that you're already, you've got, on this end, we've got a couple people who've been working in workplace wellness. I mean, are you working in workplace wellness, Meg?
Oh yeah, I am. In fact, I just picked up a project.
Okay,
So
okay.
I have a small project in it.
Okay. But for the rest of you, and Natalie, I know that you have been as well, or more focused here at CIIS.
Private practice more right now.
Okay. So for the rest of you, have any of you worked in workplace wellness before, or is this new? Okay, so you have.
I'm just doing a little bit now where I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
How's that going for you?
It's interesting. There are some people that are interested, and others we're trying to bring over to our side of things.
Okay.
Convince people it's worthwhile.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of issues with getting people with the uptake piece.
Yeah.
What company are you?
It's a nonprofit, a senior center.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Anybody else want to share their word? Yeah.
I just put experience since I'm starting school here in the fall. Just wanted to
Congratulations.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, good. And anybody else?
Ideas.
Okay, good. All right. So just want to kind of give you a little bit of background. I have been working in the space of workplace wellness for a while, and Meg and I are good friends from National Wellness. And last year at the National Wellness Conference, Meg pulled me aside and she's like, "You teach a class at CIIS," and I was like, "Okay." So
just last summer, my God.
yeah. So I'm just finishing up teaching a course here that that finishes on the 16th, and then we'll be running it again in the spring. Correct?
Exactly.
But one of the requests that I had gotten was people had requested to audit the class or kind of drop in, and I said no. I said, no, you can't. And one of the reasons is because I really built a nice community with the class, and I didn't want people kind of coming in and out. So I did say that I would be happy to do a little snapshot of the course in this 45 minutes that we have together. So that's kind of what this is about. And the thing that we have been exploring over the course of our time together is this question about workplace wellness, and is it actually working? And Angela, since you're actually in it, what are your thoughts? Is it working?
Well, we're just trying to get it started. So we
Okay.
started doing things like Tai Chi that the employees can drop into, or chair stretching to try
Cool.
to promote people to take a break.
Right.
There's some walking duos going on. So it's really just coming from the employees up right now. So
Great.
we don't
So
have
it's
a
bottom of initiative.
structured program yet.
Okay, cool. All right. So about Motion Infusion. Motion Infusion is a company that I founded in 2008 because that was such a good year to start a new company. And our whole mantra, our whole mission is to get people and organizations in motion. Literally, as in literally getting people up and out of their seats, but also figuratively as in getting people on the road to change. And that's really kind of the heart and soul of any wellness initiative, is really getting at that behavior change piece. So we have programs that are targeted toward employees. We have programs that are targeted toward leaders and managers. And then we also have a lot of train-the-trainer kinds of programs. So in a sense, this course was kind of a little bit like the train-the-trainer programs that I offer. And my background is actually, I was an educator. I was an urban public high school teacher here in San Francisco, and I have my master's in education. And so the sweet spot that I have created for myself in this field of workplace wellness is that I take best practices from the field of education and I've applied it toward wellness. And so while I'm not necessarily an expert in any of the things like exercise physiology or nutrition or even mindfulness, I am an expert on how you make the content more engaging. And so that's really been, again, the sweet spot that I've established for myself in this field. These are some of the organizations that Motion Infusion has worked with. And then I recently had a book that came out in 2015. It's here in your library, called Workplace Wellness That Works. And it was really a nod to a lot of the popular media that was coming out with titles like, Does Workplace Wellness Work? Usually not. And so really looking at the field of workplace wellness and what's wrong with it and what can we do better. And it provides 10 steps to do it differently. And anybody here who's either written a book, I know you have, Meg. Any other people who've written a book? Okay, anybody want to write a book? Okay, awesome. So if you're ever wanting, maybe we have a little bit of time at the end, I can tell you a little bit about the story about getting this published. But if you're wanting some insights into how to get a book published, happy to share that. Because it is not necessarily a clear path. All right, so we're going to talk about Workplace Wellness That Works, and I can see that I have the wrong date here. I've kind of called this course Workplace Wellness That Works, even though formally it's called Integrative Wellness Management. But the course has been organized around the book, so I'm going to kind of take you through the book in 45 minutes or less. So this is kind of the reality that we're up against, right? Yeah. We think of this, workplace wellness is a really great idea, but by and large, we are stressed out, overworked, overweight in the average workplace. And this is kind of where you step in if you're entering the field of workplace wellness. And if we take kind of a bigger picture of this, what we know is that as a country, and actually increasingly as a global community, we are facing nothing short of a tidal wave. We are overwhelmed with statistics like the fact that over 2/3 of us are either overweight or obese. We're also overwhelmed with statistics that about 1 in 10 of us are diabetic, and many of us are on the road to becoming diabetic. We also know that heart disease continues to be the #1 killer. But one of the things that we don't necessarily think about is the impact that it's having on our children. So for our children, we are looking at the prospect that, first of all, already 1 in 5 of our children are already obese, which is hard to imagine. And we're looking at the prospect that likely 1 out of 4 will acquire type 2 diabetes at some point in their lifetime. And we know that this does not impact all populations the same. There are some populations that have been more impacted than others. So for some populations, we're looking at 1 in 3, maybe even 1 in 2. And we are, for the first time, looking at the possibility that our children are likely to have a shorter life expectancy than we do. For the first time ever in history. Unless we do something about this. So the question is, what can I, as one person, what can I possibly do to stand up to this tidal wave? It feels so huge, it feels so enormous. Well, if each of us were to do 3 simple things, if we were to stop smoking, eat healthy, and get enough exercise collectively, the research repeatedly shows that we could prevent up to between 70 and 90% of the major chronic diseases. We know this. This is not rocket science. You would be hard-pressed to find anybody who didn't know that smoking is bad for them, for example. Or you would be hard-pressed to find anybody who didn't know that it's a good idea to eat a lot of vegetables. But the problem is that only 3% of the population actually puts these basic practices into their daily practice. And so in one study that looked at the so-called American Heart Association Simple 7, this was a study that looked at a group of 17,829 adults, and they wanted to see how many of those adults met the so-called Simple 7. So it's our 3 basic practices here again. So getting enough exercise, having a healthy diet, being a non-smoker for at least a year, and then in turn all of these so-called health risks, so things like having a healthy weight, healthy cholesterol, healthy blood sugars level, healthy blood pressure. How many people out of a group of 17,829 adults do you think met the simple setup for having a healthy heart? Okay, that's an excellent guess.
2.7%.
2 people. They did the same study with children between the ages of 12 and 19. How many do you think met the simple setup? 0. 0. The diet that children are having now is so poor that statistically speaking, 0 of our children are meeting the simple setup. So this is basically what our work comes down to. I was going to get up early to go for a run, but my toes loaded it in. So you described this, Angela, for example, in your program, kind of getting that uptake. Like, people know the programs are there, and you're going to experience this in any workplace wellness initiative that you might get involved in, but it's really hard to get people out the door and actually get them engaged. And it turns out that there's a lot of factors that go into that beyond just personal responsibility, and that's really, by and large, how we have framed this proposition in the field of workplace wellness and in wellness in general. But it turns out that there's actually a much bigger picture. So what we know is that we are collectively facing what I would call a massive knowing and doing gap. And the question is why? Why? I'm asking you.
Well, in my office, if I don't have principal engineers doing stuff, no one else will do it. So it's like there's very hierarchical
Okay.
in our culture. So if your boss isn't out doing his walk, no one's going to do their walk.
Yes.
There's a big
That's a very, I'm glad you brought that up because that's actually an area of study that I'm moving into, which is specifically the role of the manager. And in the field of workplace wellness, there's been a lot of focus on getting the CEO buy-in and getting their participation. But it looks like actually the research is showing that once you have that initial buy-in, so they set the tone, they allocate the resources, and they say it's okay, we can have this in the first place. It really comes down to the managers. So the manager every manager has an opportunity to effectively act as a multiplier or a gatekeeper. And research suggests that actually they are about 70% responsible for the level of variance in terms of their team members' participation in wellness. And just to give you an example, at Safeway, for example, there's a saying apparently that if your boss thinks it's interesting, you should think it's fascinating. So, just a lot of pressure to kind of do exactly what your immediate supervisor does. Yeah.
But I think sometimes the CEO might think it's a good idea and set a tone, but then also sort of send contradictory messages with the goals that still need to be met. And I think where the middle manager is finding difficulty doing both and not finding time, so they can't model that.
Exactly. Yeah. Great. Good. Yeah.
Well, this doesn't really necessarily have to do with the workplace, but I was reading recently, it's talking about how people have become so lazy these days with the apps that we have on our phones and the development of the apps on our phones, that they got the TaskRabbit one is a good example. You can hire somebody to go stand in line for you for $20, right? Here's $20, go stand in line for me, or go drive to San Jose and pick up something for me, right? These apps are promoting a culture of such laziness that if something goes bad with the interaction in these startup groups, that these people never use that app again. And so, yeah, these people decide, oh, you know what, I decided I don't want to drive down to San Jose, so I'm just not going to go. These startups are moving so fast that they can't hire quality people.
Yeah.
And then our culture is getting so lazy that everything's falling apart.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so we've got a lot of environmental forces, we've got a lot of cultural forces, and one of the biggest things that I'm really trying to bring to this field is really moving away from this mindset that it's about personal responsibility. And I would argue that, in fact, it's much more about the larger culture and environment that we happen to be born into. And we are now in a culture in which we've had this massive influx of all these labor-saving devices and all these apps, and so we have literally extracted movement from our lives, for example, as a result of that. So we have to find ways to kind of override all of those cultural forces to be able to kind of return back to what we already had in place. All right, so we basically have 3 portals of entry. Schools is one big portal of entry. Another one is the workplace, and then then a third community. So this is what we're really focused on for the sake of our conversation today, is the workplace as a portal for actually making a difference. So let's take a look at how we typically do it. So this is what you might call the typical protocol in a workplace wellness initiative. So you typically start with some type of assessment. So what might that assessment be?
A survey.
Okay, it might be a survey. So what might you be surveying?
You could send a survey to the employees and say, what are your top 3, health concerns, or you could ask people about their stress levels.
Good. So needs and interests is a good one. So what are your needs and what are your interests? Okay, good. What else? What are some other typical types of assessments that are conducted at the beginning of an initiative? HRAs. So health risk assessments. The big one, and then the other big one is biometric screenings. So coming in and doing a clinical screening, and then more and more companies are also moving towards some of these broader kinds of assessments, like looking at the environment, looking at the culture. But generally speaking, the classic forms of assessment are HRAs and biometric screenings. So then that's typically followed up by some kind of feedback, like, wow, gee whiz, you've got X number of health risks and you're not doing that well, and so you really need to sign up with our coaching program because you're pre-diabetic. And then, so then we kind of try to get people to join these programs. So what might these programs be?
Coaching program.
Okay, coaching program, yes. What else?
Smoking cessation.
Smoking cessation, weight management.
Healthy eating.
Healthy eating, so it might be a lunch and learn or an informational session about healthy eating or about getting active. So let's actually practice something right now. This is something that I often do in a session I have called Please Don't Have a Seat, getting back to your point, Ryan. So when we move, not only do we get healthier, but we get happier. It's true. There's lots of research to show this. And we even get smarter. And the reason why we get smarter is it actually helps to produce new brain cells, but it also helps to increase the synapses between the left and the right side of the brain. So we're going to try out an exercise right now. This will wake you up. So I'd like you to stand up. And it's easier if you say it with me and you do it with me. So with your right arm, 1, 2, a little bit more enthusiasm, 3, 4, 5, 6. Awesome. Okay, left arm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, right arm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Left arm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Are you ready? All right, so this helps to create synapses between the left and the right side of the brain. This is called a contralateral exercise. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Awesome. Okay, good. So we just facilitated some connection between the left and the right side of the brain. You can stay standing if you want, or you can have a seat. So this is kind of our typical protocol, and then we have lots and lots of incentives and increasingly penalties to try to get people to move down the line. So the question is this working?
Not as well as we want.
Okay, not as well as it could. All right. So let's take a look at the data. What the research is showing is that in the initial phase, in these HRAs and these biometric screenings, we're getting a little under half who are walking in the door. But by the time we get down to the actual program, we are missing out on over 80% of eligible employees. 80% are choosing to not even enter the programs. So the question is why? And what can we do differently? So it's no wonder that we're having articles like this one coming out in the New York Times, do well at the workplace wellness programs work, usually not, and this is what I was referencing earlier, and this is one of the articles that I was kind of giving a nod to in writing this book. So what we have learned the hard way in the field of workplace wellness is that unlike the field of dreams, if you build it, they will not necessarily come. And in fact, they may do just the opposite. They may run the other way. And so it's no wonder that many of us who are in the field, we feel like this. Sisyphus trying to push a rock up a hill. Do you feel like that, Angela, in your program?
Not yet, but I could see it happening.
Okay, okay, good. All right, so the question is, how can we feel a little bit less like Sisyphus pushing a rock up a hill? How can we really start to have more of an impact? Well, this is what I call it the Wild Wild West, because nobody's figured it out. Let's be honest, nobody's figured this out. But you can go back and you can start yet another program. Or, so it might be another incentives program, another app, another Wellness Champions program, another Fitbit program, another coaching program, or you can do something different. You can start a movement. Because people like to feel like that they're part of something bigger, and that's what really moves people. So that's what this Workplace Wellness at Work is all about, is how can we reconfigure starting yet another program to really starting a movement that people want to feel like that they're a part of. So here are our big steps. One is you want to start it, then you want to build it, and then you want to give people the tools to make it last. And that's what we're going to talk about in the remaining half hour. How are we doing? It's afternoon. I know it's easy to get sleepy. You've had lunch, but I'll do my best. All right, so step number one, you got to shift your mindset from expert to agent of change. I would argue that Oprah Winfrey has had more influence on our behaviors than any expert out there in the field of workplace wellness, or in wellness in general. So what we often forget is that our number one job is persuasion. And just like every advertiser knows, it's cute puppies and cute horses that sell beer or sell products more so than any information about the benefits. And so we have to do a better job of speaking to the heart, making what I call the emotional case. And I mean this both directions, not just for the bottom-up engagement, but also for the top-down engagement as well. We have to do a better job of making the emotional case. Then we can think about making the business case. But I would argue that we've been trying to do it the other way around, making the business case and selling people on all the millions of benefits that come with wellness, how it's going to benefit you as an individual, how it's going to benefit you as a manager, how it's going to benefit you as an organization, but not enough about how we really capture people on an emotional level. Yes?
So I think that people maybe in our field that really capture the essence of the heart piece, when they look at going into corporate wellness, they adapt themselves thinking, oh, I'm going into corporate, I have to make this more business, rather than saying, that's not working there.
Yes.
So a way to infuse more of what we have into it.
So. Absolutely. Meg, thanks for coming. Yeah, you bet. All right, so you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that there are so many people who feel like that they've got to sell the program on a logical basis, but it's just not working. And then they wonder why nobody's walking in the door. It's because it's all about logic, and that doesn't sell a program. So one of the things that's kind of interesting when you are looking at the business case, there's been so much discussion about ROI and trying to save on healthcare costs. Well, as it turns out, here's our biggest opportunity for saving, which is presenteeism. People showing up in body, but not in mind and spirit. And this is where our greatest opportunity is for savings. And this is what we need to be emphasizing more, is the additive elements of wellness, not the subtractive elements, as in less about reducing healthcare costs and more about how it's going to enhance teams, how it's going to enhance retention and attraction, how it's going to enhance morale, how it's going to enhance productivity, and how it's going to more effectively address presenteeism, which is giant. All right, so one of the first things that I tell people to do is that you want to think about building your story bank. What is a story that's going to capture people to get them on board with your movement? And it's interesting because I do tons and tons and tons of these trainer programs, and people are hard-pressed to come up with stories, but if I ask them to come up with statistics, they got all kinds of statistics. So thinking about the stories that are going to sell the statistics, right? Okay, this is, if you don't know who this is Michael Gervais, and he is the sports psychologist for the Seattle Seahawks. And he asks every question, or every conversation with every player and every coach begins with the question, what is possible? And then he works with them using mindfulness to help them to really achieve that. So he begins from a place of helping people to imagine what's possible, helping them to really create a vision. And this is something, step number 2 that we want to think about is how can we help people not so much about health, because health is boring for most people. Most people don't care. It's too far off in the future, especially if you're trying to get millennials, people who are healthy, they're not focused on that. So you gotta be thinking bigger picture. So this is really about recasting the conversation from health and survival and disease prevention, all the scary stuff that people don't want to think about, to instead thinking more about how can I fully thrive in life. And so if we're thinking about how can I fully thrive in life, then we move beyond a conversation just about reduction of physical risk factors and instead look at all those multiple dimensions of well-being. So that includes things like career well-being and emotional well-being, community well-being, financial well-being, social well-being. All of these things really matter. And the exciting thing is, especially when we're trying to get those managers on board and everybody on all levels engaged, is there's lots of great material here to make the case for your program. For example, did you know that those employees who have not just a good friend, but a best friend at work are 6 times more likely to be highly engaged in their work? So this gives you great information, a great way to justify social well-being at work. All right, so it really helps to expand. All right, so this is a leader who imagined what's possible. His name is John Teal. He's with Merrill Lynch, and he hired his wellness gurus, this mindfulness guy and this fitness guy. And the problem is that he forgot to check in with the culture. And so there was this massive backlash. And in the words of one of the employees at some event, there was the return of the thundering herd and like a palpable return to meat, booze, and potatoes. And everybody was like, we don't want this wellness stuff. And the problem is that John Teal, even though he's a senior leader, he forgot to check in and uncover the hidden factors. That is, to take a look at the culture. And as you all probably know, any well-designed wellness program, if it doesn't take into factor the culture, is likely to be undermined by that. So this is why we hear this expression all the time, is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you can have the best strategy in the world, but if it's not supported by the culture, then it's highly unlikely to survive. And so on a very basic level, is this a want-to culture, as in people actually want to be there at the organization, or is it a have-to culture? And if it is the latter, it's highly unlikely that people are going to authentically and meaningfully engage with your wellness program. They're probably going to engage with it enough to get the incentive, check the box, and they're out the door. All right? So one of the first things that you want to do is you want to assess your organization's culture. So I'm assuming everybody here has had some type of work experience, correct? All right, so what we're going to do, there's kind of 2 ways to go about assessing the culture. You can do surveys, and you can kind of do more quantitative kinds of assessments, looking at things like rates of injury, back injuries a lot of times are associated with a lot of stress in the workplace. So you can look at those kinds of things, you can conduct surveys, but then you also want to kind of gather the stories behind those statistics. And one of the best ways that I have found to do that is this. I'll lay these images out on a table, and I'll ask people to select the image that best captures their day-to-day experience. So I'd like for you to take a moment to think back to a job that you had and turn to a partner. And if we're uneven, then it's 2, 2, 2. Okay. Then are we all even? Numbers of people? Oh, you guys can be a group of 3. So which of these images best captured your day-to-day experience in the work that you most recently had, or maybe if you're working right now, what the current environment is like for you. And then think about the average employee. What do you think that the average employee in your workplace or in your previous workplace was like? Which image do you think they would choose? Okay, ready, set, go. And what did you come up with? Yes?
I came up with a floating balloon.
Okay, can you tell us why?
Well, my previous job experience, everyone kind of did their own thing. And I kind of floated away and did my own thing. And so if ever there was anxieties or stresses, I have a great way of just kind of whatever, like going in my head and not dealing with it.
Yeah.
Not being affected by it. And so I would just kind of be like the grounding one who people would come to and vent to, and kind of the balloon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Amanda.
I chose the horse one.
Okay.
From my experience in the Peace Corps. It's kind of like you're like, I'm there, and then culturally you just like get kicked in the head and you're like, okay, I'm not there. Like, hey guys, I have this great idea, and they're just like, nope. So I think like ideally the idea was like all the hands coming together and we're all working together. But I think in reality for me, a lot of my colleagues, it was like the horse. Like you're just like you're on their heels and you're like, yes, it's a great idea, and they just reject you.
Great. Yeah.
I was a child welfare worker, so it's almost like the horse could be kicking the person under the boxes. That would be more the ideal.
So you combine them. Okay.
Combine that and the one with the carrying the burden and everything. She just couldn't come up for air.
Yeah. Okay. So, what is this like for you as looking at these images as an exercise? And what do you think about this as an exercise?
It's cool because, like, you know, when you have thoughts and feelings, this puts it in a perspective of, it's not words, it's a visual kind of perspective. You're translating your thoughts and feelings into something that's physical.
Yeah. And the other thing that's nice about it, I mean, one of the problems with surveys is that a lot of times people start answering the way they're supposed to. And there is no supposed to. And this really gets at people on a deeper level, and this is where you really start to get the stories. And also the tears, I have to say, in a lot of organizations that I've worked with. Yeah.
I love the one with the trees and the sun coming through. That's like my ideal workplace. So I love the visual images.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the one next to it, I thought those were sugar cubes.
Oh.
That still works. That's how you don't have any wellness.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, so in my experience, this has been the #1 image that's chosen. Just tells you a little bit about some of the organizations I worked with. Yeah. Okay, so we go to the doctor, and what does the doctor do?
Tell you what to do.
Yeah, it tells you what to do, but also tell you what's wrong, right?
Right.
And the problem is that fear is not motivating. It just isn't. So we're starting with what's right is. So that brings us to step number 4. Oh shoot, I don't have, okay. So, for example, you would think that a heart attack would be enough to, quote, scare somebody into making a lifestyle change. You would think. But what the research shows is that after a year, less than 10% are still in compliance with the recommended lifestyle changes. So Dean Ornish and his team at Spectrum in Sausalito, they have taken a different tack. They've taken more of a start with what's right approach. And instead of warning their patients that if they don't make these changes, then they will what? Die, right? So fear-based approach. Instead, they encourage their patients to embrace life. So they take a positive, non-judgmental approach. And interestingly enough, after a year, almost 80% are still in compliance. Pretty remarkable. And after 3 years, the majority are still in compliance as well. So a lot of evidence to suggest that starting with what's right really helps to build self-confidence, self-efficacy. And there's, you all might be familiar with Barbara Fredrickson's work from the University of North Carolina, and she talks about this broaden and build concept. But basically, when we start from a positive place, it really opens our mind to more expansive thinking. And when it comes to making a lifestyle change, it requires higher order creative thought, not fear-based narrow thinking. Yeah.
I think people aren't going to forego these behaviors as a result of coping mechanisms in their life without seeing that there is something that's positive that they're moving towards,
That's exactly
where the
right.
benefits sort of outweigh.
Yeah. And again, I mean, I think one of the problems with the field of workplace wellness that it is that it's been dominated by people coming from more of a biomedical background, and so we're using that, you know, go to the doctor, play doctor. And the problem is, again, as we talked about earlier, that physical risk factors are such a small part of overall thriving, that it's no wonder why we're pushing people away in droves, because nobody wants to be told what's wrong with them. There's nothing worse than starting from a place of what's wrong with you and we're gonna fix you, to what's right with you, and let's enhance that and really help you to achieve, become reach your full potential in life. So one of the exercises that has been used a lot in hospital settings, probably would work really well in child welfare kind of environment as well, is something called Name 3 Good Things. So for 6 weeks, at the end of the day, you simply name 3 good things that happened that day. And it apparently has remarkable effect on depression, as well as burnout, which is a giant issue in organizations, kind of service-oriented organizations. So I'm going to ask you all to do the same thing right now. You've got I've passed around another note card, and if you would just take a moment to write out 3 good things that have happened today, and then you're actually going to turn to your partner again, and actually, no, we're going to do it a little bit differently. Write out your 3 good things. As soon as you have written out your 3 good things, and don't take forever to do it because we only have about 10 minutes left, you're going to stand up when you're done, and then look for somebody else who's standing, go find them, and then share what you came up with. All right? Okay. So I don't want to overwhelm you all with, there are 6 more steps. And you can read the book to find out the remaining 6 steps. But, and we're going to wrap it up before we close. But any thoughts, and this is just kind of on this initial piece of starting the movement. And what I would contend is that we have, getting back to that image of the balloon, we've literally taken the air out of the balloon, I think. We have managed to deplete any kind of excitement or energy in most of these wellness programs. And we've made it feel more like going to the doctor, and nobody likes going to the doctor, as opposed to really becoming our best selves and making the world a better place. And that's the kind of stuff that I think is really engaging and really brings people to life. It's things like, for example, at Square, they go out every Thursday and they clean streets in teams. That's awesome. It's getting people up and out of their seats. It's making a difference in their community. It's enhancing teams. Those are the kinds of things that we need to be doing more of, and less of these silly health risk assessments and biometric screenings that tell people basically what they already know. And especially with health risk assessments, people are reporting it themselves, so it's self-reported data. And I think that we have managed, in our effort to try to, quote, diagnose the problem and keep a scorecard on how we're doing, we have depleted the energy from this movement. And so the more we can think about being those agents of change, like Oprah, I think the more likely we are to actually start to make change. So what I would like for you to do is, on the opposite side of your note card, I'd like for you to write down one word of a takeaway, one word that captures a takeaway for you from our brief discussion today. And after you've done that, then I will wrap this up. So one word.
It's a word with a dash.
Oh, that's great.
Doesn't follow the rules.
Okay, who would like to share their one word? Yeah.
I wrote positive.
Good. Okay, great. Yeah. Heart. Awesome.
Multi-layered.
Multi-layered. Okay, great.
I put PDS, which is just positive behavior systems.
Nice. Good.
It's story.
Story. Yeah. Good. Okay.
Reinforcement.
Good. Okay.
Put instrument,
Instrument. Can you tell us more?
like instrument of change.
Oh, okay, good.
You know, you're a tool.
Yeah.
You know,
Good.
be
Okay.
the change. Harmony.
Great. Good. How about you?
Engaging story.
Engaging story. Good. And so tell me more about that, as in you needed an engaging story to get the movement started, or this was an engaging
Yeah,
story?
I just linked to this previous ideas about the impact of stories in general
Yes.
and how important it is to have a story
Yeah,
and how it changes everything and how you present the information
yep,
to
good,
people.
yeah.
And
How about for you, Helen?
Inquiry.
Inquiry, I love it. And how about for you, Rachel? I'm gonna put you on the spot. One more.
Yeah, story, I think. The idea of telling stories resonates with me as a motivation and as a way to encapsulate experience.
Good. Okay, so we come back to that one person. What can I possibly do to make a change? And be that instrument of change. Well, as you all probably have read about, because of the so-called social contagion effect, every time I make a choice, positive or negative, my choices are actually never so personal. And in fact, they influence not only my friends, but my friends' friends, and even my friends' friends' friends. And they, of course, come back and influence me. So that's why, for example, research shows that if a manager personally embraces well-being, but never even speaks about it to their team members, just by the social contagion effect, every team member is 15% more likely to have a high level of well-being, just because of that. And it really does seem to travel through groups of people like a virus. So if we think back to JFK when he urged each of us to think not what our country can do for us, and I know this is so much about Peace Corps, but what we can do for our country. And one of the very best things that all of us can do is to think about reframing our personal choices as being choices that are going to influence not only our friends, but our families, our coworkers, our communities, and even our world. So each of us can go back and channel our inner superhero and become that agent of change to change our world, to change our community, to change our workplace. Literally changing the face of the health and well-being of America, one workplace at a time. Thank you all for being here. Nice to have you. And happy to answer questions if you have any.